Anyone who believes in indefinite growth on a physically finite planet is either mad or an economist.
We don't want to focus politics on a notion that involves the rejection of principles around which a large majority of our fellow citizens organize their lives.
We are not as endlessly manipulable and as predictable as you would think.
I approached mental illness kind of from left field because I never would have mentioned that I had anything wrong because, of course, the fear of being fired, so it was very covert. But then Comic Relief said, could they take my photo? Because they were sending some money to mental health charities, and they knew something wasn't right. So I said, okay. And then I thought it was going to be a little picture of me, you know, a postage-size stamp. But instead, it was a gigantic poster of me in the underground that said, this woman has mental illness, please help her. So I was mortified, so I hurled myself in front of it, thinking that's the end of it. But then as you go down, it repeated itself all the way down, and then it was all over London. So I thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to write a show and make that look like it's my publicity poster. How savvy is that? So I had to write a show, and I toured it in mental institutions because, and what was remarkable is that was the greatest reward I ever got in my career, because I was with my people. And I always think if you can make a schizophrenic laugh, you're halfway to Broadway. And the bipolars laughed and cried. But, and my favorite line, I'm going off piste here, but was my husband and I were in a serious lockdown, you know, with metal bars, and this serious psychopath came over to us, and he said, I'm your biggest fan. Which one of you is Ruby Wax? So anyway, obviously I wasn't paid, but what they did do is let me stay overnight and go into the smoking room. And that is the greatest entertainment and conversation you'll ever hear in your life. But finally I was with my people, and because if you're with them, you understand that it isn't about being sad. Depression, unfortunate word, is not about because you're having a bad hair day, or even if somebody died. That's the human condition. That's mourning. That's sadness. Unfortunately, depression is when your personality leaves town and it's as if you're suddenly filled with cement. There's nobody at home, and then the horror of it is you have to imitate who you used to be like. And by the way, nobody notices. So this is what eventually burns you out, because not only you have a disease, but you have the shame piled up on top. And so we get these abusive voices because we're in the West. I have shoes, I have a fabulous career. So you get these abusive voices, which is the disease, but you don't get one abusive voice, you get about 100,000 abusive voices. Like if the devil had Tourette's, that's what it would sound like. So anyway, I sat in a chair for 3 months, and of course people say, does it make your work any better? Excuse me, I'm a cube of lead. What am I supposed to, it's mistaken. What creativity, and here's another bitch, is when they say, you're in entertainment, does that have anything to do with it? I say my insides don't know what my outside does for a living. Do all weather girls get cancer? It's 1 in 4, and that's in the universe. That's everywhere. You know, whether you're in entertainment or you live in a mud hut or what culture you come from, depression just loves everybody. So then I began my campaign. I thought, you know, in the second half of my show, the audience get to ask questions, and suddenly it was as if we were all liberated, because we have no place to meet. We have, you know, alcoholics have their walk-in center, and boy, are they organized. There's a place on every corner with cigarettes and cookies, totally, on every corner. And I think, how did they organize that? Because these people are drunks. But I used my theater whenever I did my show, is that the one day I wasn't working, I said, this is a walk-in center. I allowed people to come off, I invited people to come in off the street, and then I provided them with the whole army from SANE charity. So now people could ask individual questions, and then I bring in neuroscientists and Peter Fonagy and Lewis Walport, so people could ask the questions that none of us know where to go to. Did I pass this to my child? What are drugs doing to me? I'm too ashamed to take drugs. Yeah? Would you be ashamed to take chemotherapy? This is a real disease. This is not, there's nobody up there with a bullhorn, and you didn't wake up thinking, should I have depression or learn golf? It's the real McCoy. I mean, and that's what we're trying to pass on. This isn't imagination. So I was so curious about it. I'll hurry up because we want to get back to Alistair and he's getting furious. I can feel it.
Tweeted about you.
Okay, all right. Anyway, I was so interested in what happens in the mind, what actually the story is, and it's not 1 in 4, it's 4 in 4. We all live in this world where we're not equipped for the 21st century. It's just too hard, it's too fast, it's too full of fear, we don't have the bandwidth. And none of us actually talk to each other. That by the constant influx of bad news, and newspapers like the Mail like to jack it up because we haven't got enough fear. So I have to know every murder that's happened. I mean, can we not limit ourselves on how much we need to know? Everything is jacked up, so we're in this kind of state of arousal. You know, you almost, when the hurricane calms down, we're almost disappointed. It builds us to this salacious frenzy. I mean, why do I have to know if there's an earthquake 20,000 miles away, or there's a shark attack in Malawi? We were only supposed to know what our neighbors were doing. You know, if the woman next door to me was having sex with the guy next door to her, I should know that. But 4 doors down, that's none of my business. We're not supposed to know that. But I'm not going to bitch about, you know, here we are, it's a digital age. It's here, okay? And we have to stop blaming the Muslims and, the government. Somebody voted him. They didn't drop from heaven. Or the global warming. The real problem is in us, in our brains, in the mothership. That's where the conflict is. And until we start to understand that this is in us, and we start to untie this conflict within ourselves, the rest of the world, it'll just carry on. And we'll blame the next guy and the next guy. So I was really interested. I won't go into it, but I decided I wanted to learn really the meat of how our brains work, because that's where the answer is. And P.S., let me just say, the least money is spent on brain research. And this is where everything else emanates from. I'm sorry, criminality. You get those kids when they're young, those brains are malleable. Okay, we won't have that kind of sociopath that grows out of that. Diabetes too, cancer, suicide, depression, cardiac problems. It all emanates from the brain, but it's not a sexy disease, so very little money is spent on that. So I went to Oxford, and I learned that you can change the way you think, that there is a way of self-regulating. Now, this doesn't get to the public. We just get books on how to hug your inner elf. You know, there are ways that if we understand how this little baby works, how it really works, and what the chemicals are that drive us to this kind of frenzy, it isn't what's out there, it's what it does to our cortisol. And we're always in a high state of alarm, always in a high state of alarm. And we really have to understand that in order to deal, in order to be creative with each other, in order for me to understand who you are, I've got to cool it. I've got to bring down that cortisol. So that's what I've been studying. And you know, eventually, we'll all have to figure it out, because there'll be no more money for beds or medication or even therapists. So really, the money should be put forward in some way that each individual will learn, we're screwed, now what do we do about it? Don't pretend everything's fine. It's not fine. So that's what I studied. I hope someday I'll be able to stand here and explain to you what cortisol levels do and how to bring them down.
You said the thing about 4 in 4. Do you think the 1 in 4 figure, you need that sort of sense of proportion to try and communicate to the public how big this is, but do you think actually it's become a bit of a difficulty? Because I've always felt it's too conservative. We've all got physical health, and sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad, so why is it not 4 in 4, and maybe 1 in 4 get a serious mental health problem? We all have mental health.
Well, I think the dividing line is getting thinner. I mean, before, depression was as if you had, I don't know, you know, diabetes or whatever, you crossed the line. But now, because of the constant pumping of needing to know everything, why can't we just say, you know what, I can't come up with a solution about Syria. I don't know. How would I know? But it's shameful if we don't know everything. It's shameful if we're not busy all the time. So I think this high level of anxiety has fed into the 404. And we don't have a name for the diseases, but I would say we're all infected.
And this mindfulness stuff that you're doing, just briefly tell us what it... Just assume that somebody's landed from Mars and they haven't got a clue what it is. What is it?
So it's actually separating yourself a little bit from the oncoming thoughts, you know, because it's a bombardment. There is a part of your brain, the amygdala is up all the time. That's the alarm system. There's a part of your brain called the insula, and everybody has, you don't have to go on Amazon. When you feel something in your body, like a stomach ache or something, you know, in your body, the insula becomes active. If you practice just a few minutes a day, when these voices, and you have to be the judge of that, sometimes they're really useful. You problem solve, you got a deadline. But we're creatures of habit. And if we don't watch it, we're always on the, when is the last email? When can I stop? We don't have a braking system. When you feel the thoughts are not productive and you're going into rumination, you know, there's some questions you can't answer, like, why does nobody call me? Why does, you know, why did my boyfriend leave me? That's rumination. You'll never come up with an answer to that one. When you notice the thoughts are not really working for you, you send your attention, and this is hard, to something physical, to a sense in the body. So either your foot on the floor or sound, if you just listen. You cannot use the insula and the amygdala at the same time. I mean, this is what science is so great about. If you listen and send your attention, just listen for a minute, the anxiety automatically goes down. So when your mind grabs you back, you really hear the nature of who you are. Mine says, I'm so embarrassed, people are looking at me, how dare I do this? We all have our recordings, but here's the other part, is you learn to not make judgments. You learn to say, okay, that's my recording. I'm gonna go back to listening. So it gives you a little bit of an anchor and have a view of who you are, because this is what a shrink does. He sort of sits there, has compassion, and whatever garbage you come up with, he holds it. So now, in a sense, you're viewing it, but you're also giving yourself a break.
And have you been getting depression less since?
I haven't had it for 7 years, and I will have it. This isn't a disease that you wish away, but a few times I've dodged the bullets. Because I sit a few minutes a day, it's just like developing a muscle. It's like doing a sit-up. The insula gets a lot more gray matter around it. So then, when the shit hits the fan, right, and I send my attention to either the bottom of my feet or listening, or actually you can trace your breath, but that starts to sound too fluffy. You actually are developing this thing, so when there's a lot of stress, you have an alternative. You can bring it down into your body, which we never use. It's just this lump of meat we drag around. So actually you're learning an anchor. You're learning, well, cognitive therapy, you have to work with a therapist. With this, you do it on your own. You do it at a bus stop, you know, when you're going, come on, come on, come on. Looking at your watch isn't gonna make the bus come any faster. So if you just stop and breathe, or you feel the ground, or you actually look at another person, I mean, just look. And when your thoughts go back, which they will, because they've been going for 25 years or 35 years and saying, I'm an idiot, why am I here? At least you're present. Because you can't listen yesterday or tomorrow. At least you're present, and this is something none of us are trained for.
And do you do it, you say you do it a few minutes a day. That's like sitting down calmly and doing that very, very consciously, but does it become something that you do all the time?
No, no. Well, it would be nice if you could, but then you would be the Dalai Lama.
I mean, can you do it on the move? Can you be...
Completely. If you're walking, let's say, if you're in a hurry, if you start to notice the weight of your body, the way, when there's interoception, that's immediately, that insula is lighting up. Immediately. It's not something you're imagining. As soon as you go in your body, I mean, Tai Chi does it too, or some people do it with yoga. As soon as you're doing it for show, that's not what I'm talking about. But a pianist will only grow the neurons to play better if he's actually in his fingers. If we multitask, it doesn't register as any learning. And multitasking, by the way, is the most, I mean, we need it, but it's like having too many windows open. Eventually your computer will crash. Now when I'm with my kid, it's so hard to break those habits. I shut down the computer. It's so difficult. I put down the iPhone and I just listen. And the kid knows I'm there, because the other guy knows you're with him. You can tell when I'm really with you or when I'm thinking about where I parked my car. And if I have that kind of, if I'm in that state will pass to her and to him and to you, because we work like neural Wi-Fi. So it isn't just about I feel better. This is about the conflict is over. I feel what you feel. She feels what he feels. And this makes business a different environment, and it makes our lives a different environment. If we're constantly arguing upstairs and we're isolated,